Welcome back to Sacred Success Salon, where we are talking about how to own your power, live your purpose, and claim your prosperity. I am your host, Anna Kowalska. And today we welcome back an amazing guest that I'm really excited to have this conversation with, Eugenia Oganova. Welcome, Eugenia.
Oh, thank you so much, Anna, for having me. This is going to be lots of
The energy is already high because we started before we clicked the call button. So let me just say a few words about who you are, so our audience, in case they don't know you, knows who they're listening to. So Eugenia is an international wealth energetics business and marketing coach for coaches, healers, and holistic health professionals who desire to fully step into their soul mission and live their purpose through a soul-aligned multi-six-figure business. I'm excited to have this conversation with you, Eugenia, because we've gone there before. You've been to the salon. Was this your third time, I think, in the salon? Yeah. It's your third time. Oh my God, I love it. I love when guests come back because that just is, there was like a continuity we don't even know about in the conversation. So right before we click the record button, you mentioned there is something coming, and some of us may know, in 2027. And with all the changes that are coming, that are already happening around us, something really solid to me about knowing, all right, 2027, there's going to be, this like demarcation, and we can do something to prepare for it. And I would love for you, let's just help us understand what's going on, what we can expect, and how to prepare.
Well, there are a lot of ideas that people have about this date, 2027. Yeah. And some people say, oh, it's going to be great, practically like heaven on earth. Some people say, oh, it's going to be horrible, everything will fall apart. Yeah. I don't like this black and white view. So my perspective on it is that there are cycles on the planet, and we are entering into a high point of the cycle, which is the 2027. So is it good or bad? It depends on how energetically aligned you are to experience that high point of the cycle. So energetically, what's been changing on a planet is we've been moving from a lot of the tribal consciousness, which means there's a group of people that's kind of following somebody who's in control, into more individuality of a consciousness, which is where each person has direct link to their own guidance, to God, to source, to intelligence. So they don't need to follow someone else in order to have a direction. They can follow their own inner voice. That's kind of the gist of the basic transformation here. And working with the solar council, which are multidimensional beings, there are a lot that's been always talked about this day. The energy has been moving into it from 2012. So we're kind of in this big cycle of completing the tribal consciousness and moving into individuality consciousness. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that because they think of an individuality consciousness as selfish, when actually it's not selfish. It's more like self-centered in a good way, because you have self-worth, because you have self-love, because you have self-acceptance. And the good news about that is people who arrive towards that 2027 date with their individuality, with their inner self activated, so that they do have conscious awareness of that inner navigation system within themselves, that they listen to themselves instead of projecting their authority onto somebody else, may that be TV or authority figure or politicians or whatever it is, but instead listening to themselves. Those people naturally align with what's coming. And what's coming, it's that date aligns us with the universal abundance field. So that means that, at least in my perspective and the way I've heard it from the Solar Council meetings, is that energetically there's going to be a little bit of a shift, that people who arrive to that place with that individuality, they will be able to utilize their unique gifts to bring in incredible abundance. And people who, for whatever reason, still need to go for another cycle because they have not quite gotten that selfhood yet, they will be supported by some sort of a group field. So maybe it's some sort of a, I don't know, like universal income or something that just kind of like maintains people. But the wealth as an ability to create something based on your own desire, your own vision, that is coming with so much ease in 2027 and after. But the fine print is individuality.
Yeah. So great. You explained it so clearly. And I even love that you spoke to there will be a group of those people who maybe haven't done the work for whatever reason, absolutely. Right? And there will be supported by something like maybe, what did you call
universal
it?
Income or some
universal income. Yeah. You're right, universal income.
Yeah.
So that like reminds me of scenes from so many movies, by the way, of like this apocalyptic movies. Well, I'm glad that we are in, hopefully, because you're watching, we are in the group of people that are actually going to do everything we possibly can to step into our individuality, right? So what does it look like? I know you speak to prosperity a lot, and I love going there with you. What does it look like for us right now? How do we prepare? So very often there is this like urgency of right now, do something right now. All of a sudden, through the conversation with you, we got this gift of time. We have 5 years, right? So how can we right now, those who are watching us right now, who either already have started to do this work or been doing it for a while, what is it that we can do right now to prepare and like really be set up?
Well, one of the main things I would say is to understand your own design, to understand how you made, to understand what is it in your own system that is natural for you and what is not. So if you're working with a coach, if you're working with a mentor, make sure you don't just copy what someone else is doing, because a lot of times this is kind of how it was before, is like, oh, they've done it before, they've done it this way, I just repeat that and then it should work for me. And then you try to do that and then it doesn't work, and then you start to feel bad, and what's wrong with me and why is it working for everybody else but me? Well, the reason for that is because the energy has changed. It is totally true that before it was possible to just copy some strategies that are out there on the market that are functional and very well maintained and they do work, and then it would work for you as well. But now, as the energy is different, it's asking of us to find our own way, which I call soul design. So it's a combination of how you're built, your soul contract, your gifts, your talents, your expertise that comes with you into your lifetime, but also your karmic patterns, your conditioning from how you were brought up in your life, and all of that together that makes you. So that soul design, that's design of you, is unique. There's nobody else like you, even if they were born at the same day, the same hour and whatever, it's still going to be different. So whichever way you are designed, you have your own way of which strategies, including in business, work for you and which work against you, even if that happens to be a proven strategy that works for someone else. So as to how prepare is to really start listening to your own way. Like, for example, some people are designed to respond to whatever happens immediately. Like it's like an inner alarm, like, yep, go for that. And they must listen to that. And if they don't, they will lose the right timing. Other people, actually majority, are absolutely the opposite. So they decide to get that little, ooh, I like it, and then give themselves a period of time to process it through their body. Now, that does not mean months and months and months. I mean, I guess for some people it could be, but for most it's like 24 hours, sleep on it. But giving yourself that way for your body to digest, asking, does my body want it? Do I have energy for it? Is this something that truly gets me excited? Or am I doing this because I think I should? I think if I do this, I will get blank, whatever it is I think I want. So if then kind of mentality, like a lack, like if there's a hole to fill and you think that if you do this, it will fill that hole and then somehow you're going to be okay. Do you think that by doing that action, somehow you're going to prove something to yourself or to somebody that might be dead by now, but you're still trying to prove? So look for these little inklings within you as to for the cause of your action. And it's not just big actions as in signing up with an agency, let's say, but it's small actions too. Like, let's say email arrives and you need to reply it. It's non-negotiable. It has to be done because it's part of your business. But how you do it, that's where soul design comes in. In the olden days, it used to be that, you know, being productive, being responsible meant you respond right away, and that's what's expected of you. But nowadays, if you do that, you might actually create burnout in your system. And those micro burnouts add on. And then we start to feel like, oh, how come I don't have any energy? Well, because you probably done a lot of those little micro burnouts when you didn't listen to what your body needed. Maybe your body says, okay, I kind of need to, like, I have an emotional response to this email, but I need to give it a little bit of time to kind of settle. And then maybe you respond in 1 hour. So it's not like you're going to wait a long time. But by giving yourself that little bit of processing time, you find your own rhythm. And the same goes for pretty much anything you do. Like, I'm sure you know, like if you're writing a post and it's a promotional post for something you're launching, if you're in a flow, you can write that thing in 10 minutes and it's awesome. Like you didn't have to think about, where do I put the CTA? Did I mention my authority? It's just kind of all there, right? And then fine, you look through it one more time and you post it and it's magical. But you can have it in your schedule. You can sit there and you can spend an hour or a day trying to write that damn post and nothing's happening. And when it comes out, it still feels semi-dead. That's what I mean by, like, how do you know where you're in it or not? You always know. Your body actually knows. We just need to actually listen to it.
Yeah, so many great things you just mentioned there, Eugenia. First of all, I have a whole file of emails that I started because it was like, oh my gosh, I really want to write about it, but the energy wasn't aligned. So I just didn't finish and I never went back to it. And they just sit there. Maybe one day I'll finish them, but it's so true, right? So there are so many great things you said. One thing that keeps coming in as you were sharing is this place of, when you said, when we're doing something to respond to something, to fill the lack, right? To fill the hole. Well, when we own a business, right? When we take on a responsibility of earning, of creating income, I won't even say earning, then we do have responsibility, right? So how do you, and they have to be met at a certain time. And I ask this question over and over because I love responses that I get, and I don't think there is never enough times we could hear how to maneuver that, right? This like human need, logical need to meet a commitment versus allowing yourself to be in a space where it is done in alignment with who you are, which may not be till the last minute sometimes, right? How do you manage that?
Well, it's a very good point about balancing responsibilities and sort of duty of the business with the spiritual alignment. That's why for so long time they went apart from one another. But we are uniting them now, and that's where we're going into your business and you being sort of interwoven. So there are two things to that I would say. One is making commitments that you're gonna be responsible for. You need to be conscious which commitments you're making, because kind of like solving the problem on the back end of the problem is not the best solution. Then you're just handling the problem. But to actually, you might not create a problem by giving yourself a better flow and being more conscious as to what you're actually committing to. And second is, there are two ways. First, I always tell my clients, if something must be done and it's non-negotiable, and in your integrity, you still believe it should be done, even if you don't, you know, right now feel like your energy goes there, then find the way to like it. Don't just do it out of, I have to, because if you do that, it will be a dead energy anyway. Find a way to like it. So the part of us that likes it or doesn't like it, it's usually the inner child. It's that side of us that says, oh, this is playful and fun, or ew, I don't want to do it. It makes me feel blah, blah, blah. Okay. So if something gets, you know, to be on your list and has to be done, and it's not negotiable and you don't feel like it, start having conversation with a part of you that doesn't feel like it, so that you can kind of like find out, what is it? Maybe she wants to have a cup of tea or a glass of wine while she's doing it. Sometimes that works. Maybe she needs to go for a walk and then she's gonna do it instead of you forcing her to do it now. Maybe she needs to do it on the couch and a laptop instead of in the office. So there's always some little adjustments that could be done to accommodate the part of us, kind of like a little bargain with the kid. Like, you know, if your child needs to get on a bus with you, let's say, and you're somewhere in a different city and you're going in the public transportation, you're not gonna like, well, I don't want to go. Well, if the plane is gonna leave, you kind of have to go. So you will have to do whatever you have to do. And ideally, it's not to drag your kid into the bus, but to have some sort of a, you know, interactive, playful agreement, turn it into fun, something, bargain, you get ice cream on the other end. I mean, something, but that the energy is not against the action. So ideally, you shouldn't have to do this all the time with everything, because then checkpoint A as to what commitments are you making. But if it happens just sometimes, that would be one of the best strategies that I know is energy still has to be right. Like energetics of business, to attract anything, like you correctly say, we don't earn the money, we attract the money. So to attract the money, you have to be a magnet. And if you're repellent instead of a magnet, then even if the action is in quotes correct, it's not going to have the result of attracting. So then it's really pointless to do the action. So that means you kind of have to adjust the energetics if you're choosing to do the action anyway, or why waste time?
Yeah, so good. That's so practical. And I it's such a great reminder, right? Just like shift your energy, find a way to shift your energy around whatever it is that you need to do to meet your commitment. But first, why don't you even start looking at what commitments are you making and what place are you making them from? Which brings me back to back to the beginning of our conversation, this whole idea of individualization and individuality and being uniquely who you truly are, right? It's, I mean, like I love talking about that, like stepping more and more into who you truly are. And even with designs that we have, I know we play with systems and supporting people in figuring out, there is still a little bit, well, actually, I would say a lot, play with it on the part of the person, right? So in my experience, and tell me, this is why I want to ask you this. I could tell somebody, hey, this is the design you are, this is what you are designed for, this is what would work for you. But it still doesn't sink in. There is still, in my experience, the work that the person has to do themselves just to move through it, right? To figure out what does it still, whatever it is that I say to them, what does it look like for them? Do you find that to be true too?
Oh, absolutely. I think the personal awareness is sort of the non-negotiable component of awakening. So if you're not awake, you don't know what's going on, then you can't really apply, and then you're still looking for somebody else to tell you. So it always amazes me when people come with this question like, so what's my purpose? What am I supposed to do? It's like, you're the one to know that, not somebody outside of you. So all the different systems, and I use myself many as well, and I'm clairvoyant, so I look at person's energy field and their patterns and everything and their soul contract. But all of that is meant to help the person to find how that is applying onto them and their experience. Like I always tell people, if you're going to hire a coach, don't hire somebody who's going to tell you how to do it. Hire somebody who's going to help you be more you. Because that is really where the gift is. So like the work I do with my clients is all of it is about like, let's figure out how you're made, but it's not a reading. It's not like, okay, this is how you are, now go and figure it out. It's like, this is what I see. These are the patterns that are there. I mean, that is true. They are there. But now let's figure out what that means for you. How do you recognize that pattern within you? Do you notice, like, I'm a master of customizing. So I always say, like, I'm a queen of customizing, because I would take the same sentence and deliver it differently to different person. So that they, because I'm reading all their field, so that they can kind of get, I totally do that. I get that. Now they get it. Then comes application or testing, I guess we can call it. That's where you start like, okay, let's say I say, great, your design is actually this. Do you notice that when you do that, it seems to work better? When you don't do that, it doesn't. Yes, I do notice. Great. Now let's look as to why you don't do it the way that you know is kind of better. Well, because then I start to feel like I'm irresponsible, or I start to feel like I'm failing, or I start to feel like somebody's going to notice that I don't know. Like, like if somebody's design is to go and be aligned, and once somebody asks them a question, the data just comes through. So that means that person should not prepare and make bullet points, because that will actually sabotage their flow. And if they know that about themselves, for example, and then they still go and do the notes, and you ask like, why are you doing that? Well, because then I feel like I'm not responsible, or then I feel like somebody is going to think I'm not good enough, or whatever. So that's where the work begins in, first of all, recognition, which pattern actually kind of feels right. Like, okay, I own that that's kind of my way. But now testing it. And that means a lot of times kind of courageously jumping into that way and dealing with all the inner voices that about like why you shouldn't, or why you can't, or how that's going to be dangerous for you. Because really, why do we do anything that's not in alignment with who we are? Only because we're being programmed out of our fear and pain to protect ourselves. And that immature form of protection is what then repels the natural way. So being self-aware and starting to recognize those patterns in a very practical sense in business, actually, that like, oh, this is what I do, and this is why, and this is linked to, oh, my mother or my father, or this would happen in school, or this, I remember I was humiliated by my neighborhood at the, I don't know, age of 3. Okay, great. Like all these little things, we start to clean them up. So then you are aware of it when you're entering into, let's say, a presentation, or when you're talking in a sales conversation, and suddenly you have two pathways. Like you can kind of be aware of the old one, like, oh, this is how I normally would do it. Oh, this is where like I kind of feel like I want to say something, but no, I'm gonna kind of trust the way that I know is more natural. And the more we start testing that, the more proof we get about that the natural actually works way better. And that's where that little voice starts to shut up because it has no more power.
So great, because what I keep hearing is like this trial and error, right? So this good old trial and error, right? Trying it on and figuring out, does it work for me or does it not? And then if it doesn't, what do you get to tweak? What pattern could be in a way? Yeah.
And I also don't believe actually that there are errors. I kind of look at it like it's a trial and more trial. Everything is an experiment. So that's kind of an older way of thinking, back to the black and white, yes or no, right or wrong. But there's something that worked out, as in I got what I wanted. And something that didn't work out means I didn't get what I wanted. But when we take the value judgment from that, it's still true. There are going to be some things you get what you want and some you don't. But that's business, that's entrepreneurship. Even when you're doing everything right, you're still going to have that. But what meaning you give things, because we are meaning giving machines. So whichever meaning you give it, if you say like, oh, now I understand how not to do it. And I can teach my clients. Now I can recognize in my clients that thing. Like somehow anything we do enriches us. We just need to make sure to remember to integrate it.
Integrate it. Remember to integrate it so it becomes part of who you are. So then you can use it in your work. So great. So great. So, okay, great. So we're preparing, we are stepping into more of who we are. We're looking at the patterns that have gotten in the way. And then there is this, so 2027 comes around, right? And then what?
Well, first as to, and what to get to. So this is kind of the thing that everybody wants to know, like, and then it will be better. And what I always want to say is that it will be still you. It's the environment energetically that's going to change. And if you change towards how environment changes, it will be beneficial for you. But it's not like, and then forever and ever, everything is wonderful. What does happen, though, is planetary octave or vibrational range that happens on a vibration shifts. So in 2027, we kind of like go through whoop up. And then we're still going to do up and down within that. But overall, the octave is a little bit higher. So that means the higher 3D components and the 4D components and some of the 5D components kind of join in. So the access to the fifth dimensional consciousness, which is this, unconditionality, love, abundance, is much more here instead of having to kind of go search for it. So there's always a dip before we go up. So the dip began in the very end of 2019. That was the beginning of the dip, and then COVID happened. So there's the dip, 2020, and then 2021, it was still very much a dip. And now as we're going into, so the 2022, it's sort of like the plateau of the dip. And now we're starting to go a little bit up. So the next year from the solar council perspective has to do a lot with planetary larger systems breaking. And that's could be traumatic for some people who are attached to those systems, but for most people, I think that are conscious, that's actually a good news. So old controlling systems are breaking. And that means there's probably going to be some planetary nature stuff happening, like maybe weather patterns changing and that kind of thing. And I don't want to call it disasters or whatever, but it's definitely going to be something difficult enough for everybody to notice. And it's already, happening in a sense. What good thing about that is the top 1% who right now has the money is and kind of like in control, but we don't necessarily want to have them in control continuously. Those people or organizations or corporations will have to start giving the funds to adjusting now the planetary field change. So that's 23, 24, where bigger things start to change. And within that, it's very important to not plug yourself into yet another cause, as in that's the right way, which then creates the group field and we're back to tribal. So it's kind of like witness what's happening and then make up your own opinion. You don't have to belong by plugging into a tribal field. You can belong just by being citizen of Earth.
Oh, this is so great, Eugenia. So one of our guests, Gabi, spoke about plugging in directly and plugging from the tribe and plugging in directly to the source, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I hear you reference to. And this whole individuality, right? Like completely removing anything that is an attachment to the way of thinking that the tribe thinks, whether tribe is your family, your community, your place of work, wherever your money comes from, whatever it is, right? Completely unplugging from, this is what I'm hearing, completely unplugging from their way of thinking, their way of being, feeling, doing anything to belong with them, or be accepted by them, truly standing, owning who you are, and then plugging directly to the source, so you don't need to belong to anything or anyone, or any
Yeah, you
organization,
only belong to
association.
yourself. So
Right.
in the energetics terms, that's switching from horizontal first, vertical second to the other way, vertical first, horizontal second. So horizontal would be what you're describing as your family, your business, your co-workers, like all of that. And vertical is your direct access to inner knowing, to inner wisdom, to your own navigation, to knowing what is the truth for you. Notice how fake news, right? Like it's all falling apart so that we find our own truth.
Right.
So not just like, oh, he said or she said, that means it's right. But that's horizontal still. But going into vertical as to know what do I feel is right, even if I'm the only one standing with that truth. But to me, for whatever reason, that is true. Great. I don't have to convince anybody about it. I'm just going to stand with that and see where that leads me. Because truth is like stepping stones. The more you do this little truth adjustment within yourself, the more you get to plug in to the universal field. And universal field is quantum field, it's field of possibilities, but it's also not just abundance, but universal intelligence as well. So if we kind of think like abundance is the goddess, the feminine source side, the universal intelligence is like the god, the masculine. Universal intelligence consists of knowledge and wisdom of all the species that have woken up already in the whole universe. So we're right now kind of living separated from that, unless there's some people like you and I, and I'm sure some people you have in your group that are kind of, plugging into that. But majority of humanity feel completely disconnected from that bigger view. So it's kind of like equivalent of the universal internet, and you get to plug in and have this cosmic Google available to you in every possible way you want, and the abundance inflow. But as I said, it's not just vertical, it's vertical first, horizontal second. So we're not getting rid of here. If something here is actually what becomes the activation or initiation in our prosperity, in our well-being, in our health, in our relationships and beneficial opportunities, by us responding to what life is giving us. Because everything is like a really complicated tapestry, right? Everything like a puzzle. And something happens here, and then the next piece and the next piece vibrates, and then it kind of like pokes you. And whatever our response to that, if it's unfiltered, if it doesn't have all these programming filters, and it's pure and it's based on our own navigation, whoop, that shoots our energy straight up, and we get access to universal intelligence.
That is such an amazing, clear explanation. I get a sense that a lot of those of you who are watching right now just got a new understanding of what is being an individual. What keeps coming in is the word sovereign, truly sovereign, right? Like, what does it even mean?
Sovereign authority.
Yes. And I think a lot of people really still misconstrued what sovereignty really is. And the way you just explained it is exactly sovereign authority, sovereign being, really truly owning that there is no other authority, not even when it comes to money. When it comes to anything, you are your own authority. You are the one that gets to choose, that gets to do the work, and then stand in your independence, and then still be a part of a community, be a part of a whole, but now from your own, standing in this solidity of who you are. I love how you explained it, Eugenia. I'm going to watch this recording one more time, because your explanation was just so clear and precise, and your visual, right? We used to be like this, and then this, and now we're like this, and then this. I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Exactly. It's like it's bringing leadership into personal leadership. So then each person becomes the leader instead of one leader, many followers. So kind of like the typical tribe, right? Instead, it becomes every person is a leader, and now they gravitate together if they align for a mission, but then they pull apart once the mission is complete, versus the tribes that were generational.
Right. Right. Oh, that's such a great point. Coming together for a mission, coming together for a project, whatever it is that you come together for, and then you disperse. Maybe some people stay together because there's still alignment, who knows? But it's different than staying together forever in a job, in a community, in a family, whatever it is, right?
The whole together forever actually part comes from I have to stay there because that's how I get love and appreciation and reflection that I'm good enough and all that. Well, what if you get all of that internally anyway?
Right.
Now you don't need to stay together with anyone unless you choose to. That elevates all relationships to a different level, including marriage, including business contracts, including any friendships, including anything pretty much. Because now it's a choice between two people, and that commitment is recommitted to every 24 hours instead of, oh, well, we signed a paper, so now like that's it, you're trapped essentially if you want it or not, even if your energy changed.
Right. So amazing. Oh, I'm so glad you brought this into the salon with such clarity. I'm really grateful for where we went with this topic and where your interview, like when you guys are watching it, it just solidifies so much of what we've been talking about, and the way you explained it your own way, your unique way, it just gave us a whole new depth to where we're going and how we get to prepare. So I am looking at the clock. I'm like, oh no, time's coming to the end. I know you have a gift for our audience, and it's a way to get into your world. So let us know, what is this that we can expect behind the button below this video?
Well, this is a video interactive series that you can go in to understand how to eliminate wealth blockages and implement spirit-centered marketing for predictable 5- and 6-figure months. So this is where you discover what needs to change in you. Like, for example, if you're kind of like finding yourself swimming upstream and doing things that don't really work for you, even though occasionally you have success and you're wondering, how do I sustain success? Well, this is what's going to explain to you about this energetic piece we were talking about and give you a little bit more of a practical application onto a business as a coach or a healer or holistic expert, how to apply this so that you can actually get paid high ticket, get paid well for doing the type of work that you do. And of course, you know, on my website, transcensiongate.com, there's so much there that you can read for free about anything that I'm talking about.
So great. Awesome. So once you get into Eugenia's world, you can discover everything else that she has to offer to you. Make sure you claim the gift. So the button below this video, click it, get immersed in the work that she's offering you through that gift, and then get into her world, because it is a beautiful world and it's prosperous world.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So amazing. Thank you again for being a yes to the salon. I really appreciate you and your wisdom. It's just such a beautiful contribution to this particular edition. So I'm glad to have you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.